Hey, what's up guys? I'm just heading to Brighton for the weekend with the Vegfest festival. I've left the house about an hour later than I intended to, which is pretty standard. So I'm probably going to miss the talk by a privileged vegan, but that's cool because I've watched quite a few of her videos already. I'm just mainly going because I want to discover some new speakers at the intersectional summit, and I need to stock up on vegan cheese. Oh my god, fuck this queue. Looks like I'm not going to be making it to Brighton anytime soon because somebody got hit by a train. Okay, literally just got into Brighton and I've just dropped my bags off in my hotel room. It's past 1 o'clock, so I've actually missed the first two speakers. But yeah, it could be a lot worse. I could have been that person under the train. So guys, this is what £60 a night buys you in Brighton. Look at how tiny this room is. I was definitely expecting something a lot bigger than this prison cell. Made it! A little bit late for the talk, but go.
Kind of undifferentiated masses and animals. We never do that to white people in our society. Every white person has an identity. Get mad at me later on. Tell me about it in the Facebook comments. I always invite people to do that. And like, you know, and there's this singular mass. We do that with other animals too. Like livestock. Just this one thing. Like we look at a field. What are all of these undifferentiated brown bodies? These brown bovine bodies. They're not individuals. They're not persons. It is this thing that we call livestock. So yeah, we do that. We do it all the time. Like again, like, you know, if people have thoughts, if people have comments, questions, reactions, like anything at all, like, you know, raise your hand. I've turned on the microphone. Wait, does the microphone go to sleep? No. Okay, no, it's still on. Yeah, so like if you have thoughts about this, like, you know, definitely, like, you know, like I said, this is completely interactive. So like, you know, join into the conversation. The next slide. I was feeding one of the gazelles in the public gardens. Gazelles are almost the only animals that look good to eat when they're still alive. In fact, one can hardly look at their hindquarters without thinking of mint sauce. The gazelle I was feeding seemed to know that this thought was in my mind, for though it took the piece of bread I was holding out, it obviously did not like me. It nibbled rapidly at the bread, then lowered its head and tried to butt me, then took another little nibble and butted again. Probably its idea was that if it could drive me away, the bread would somehow remain hanging in midair. But here's where things get like real. An Arab Navi worker working on the path nearby lowered his heavy hoe and sidled toward us. He looked from the gazelle to the bread, and from the bread to the gazelle with a sort of quiet amazement, as though he had never seen anything quite like this before. Finally, he said shyly in French, "I could eat some of that bread." I tore off a piece and he stowed it gratefully in some secret place under his rags. This man is an employee of the municipality. And here Orwell is like making a really profound statement. Once again, like you see the white person, as like Carol Adams would say, and you had alluded to earlier, the absent referent, actually talking about these two brownish bodies that is in control of a situation. This white person who is in ownership of a resource that both of them could use. This white person who is directly or indirectly responsible for the situation that they are in. You can't just rob a country, a continent even, of its resources.
So that was a very, very inspiring series of talks that I just witnessed at the Intersectional Vegan Summit. And now I am enjoying a lovely walk along Brighton Beach back to my hotel. Gonna take a shower and then go out for dinner because there are so many awesome vegan restaurants in Brighton. If you haven't been yet, you really need to come visit.
Hey guys, it's Thundar from Substance Over Style and welcome to a new video. So today I'm answering another one of your questions, or it's a requested video rather. This one comes from Vegan Margarita, who messaged me on Facebook, and she said, "Hey Sana, I really enjoyed your last video." This was the one about marriage, so check that out here. Make one about how you stay confident when working in modelling where you're constantly being compared to other women, etc. Would be really interesting to hear. Okay, so this is a really big one. This is something that has become a lot easier for me over the years. I've been modelling for about 10 years now, but when I first started in the industry, it was obviously, very, very difficult. When you're very young, it's very easy for kind of agencies to kind of like manipulate and control you. Well, I wouldn't say that it's something that they do intentionally, but when you're kind of trying to get into the industry, you've got these people who are guiding you and they're telling you things about yourself that are lacking. So they'll be like, because, you're not very tall, or because you're a certain ethnicity, or because you're not that skinny, you're going to have to work harder at this, or they'll tell you what you need to change about yourself in order to kind of get ahead. So those things can be really hard for a young girl to hear. I'm not really going to debate the morality of saying those things. Like, if you kind of choose to get into this industry, then that's kind of some of the things that you're going to have to hear, because that kind of as much as we don't like it, clients do want people who look good. They want people who look a certain way. So you kind of need to be that as much as possible. So in the beginning, whatever it was, and it wasn't just me, a lot of girls struggled with this, who were my friends and my contemporaries. Whatever it is that you feel is lacking is the thing that you're going to become really insecure about. So for me, because I'm shorter than the average model, I'm only 5'8", it was my height and also my weight as well, just because, London as a market does see a lot of international models coming who are very, very thin. And even though that isn't necessarily desired by all clients, as much as they keep saying that that's what the industry perpetuates, that isn't necessarily always true. A lot of clients don't like that super, super skinny look. But when you're kind of going to castings and that's kind of what you're seeing so much of, especially with the girls who are with much bigger agencies will be like super, super skinny, then, that is something that a lot of girls will become insecure about. And, there is a lot of there's a lot of eating disorders in the industry. A lot of girls will, when they're not working that much, they'll try and control the only thing that they can control, which they perceive to be their weight. You can't change your height, you can't change your skin color, you can maybe change, your haircut and the way you dress, but the only other thing you can change is, the size and shape of your body. So a lot of people would do that, and I definitely fell into that trap as well, because I'm quite sort of, I'm quite naturally athletic. I'm not particularly skinny. Like I don't find it that easy to be very, very skinny. But I have been, very skinny at times. So I would say over time, you kind of learn that kind of beauty is completely subjective, and it's also completely socially constructed. Like what we understand, what society perpetuates as beautiful now, we know is not, nowadays, or, in the last, especially in the last kind of decade or two, has been, very, very undiverse, singular look, which is kind of very tall, very skinny, white, super young. It hasn't always been that way. Even in the 80s and the 90s, the supermodels were much more voluptuous. They were much stronger. They had visible personalities. There was much more diversity. I'll put a link in the description box below to a really good talk by James Scully that kind of talks about the death of diversity and the death of the supermodel and the rise in abuse and exploitation in the fashion industry. So if you want to look into that in a little bit more detail, that's a really, really powerful talk that you should watch. But even before the fashion industry came about, if you look at the paintings of great masters, the kind of idealized beauty that was presented has changed a lot throughout the generations. I mean, there were times when women who we would now consider to be kind of not even curvy, but actually overweight, were actually considered the ideal. I mean, if you go to the National Portrait Gallery, you'll see all these naked nymphs with all their rolls of like fat and everything, and that was considered quite beautiful. I've just realised I need some water. I've got water, yeah. Yeah, and even in terms of different cultures have different ideas about what's beautiful. In some cultures, it is beautiful still now to be of a much sort of heavier physique. Some cultures prefer, like, we know that all over, all over the African continent, the Southeast Asia and South Asia, there is a lot of colorism, so they kind of prefer much lighter skin, and that obviously has its roots in white supremacy. But in the Western world, they kind of like more tan skin, but as long as you're still white, kind of more tanned is better. So whatever we perceive as beautiful as a society generally has associations of wealth and health, and those two things kind of go hand in hand, because if you have more wealth and more power and more social power, then that kind of correlates with better health as well. I mean, that point can be argued because throughout in recent years, the fashion industry has been perpetuating a very unhealthy body image. So whether it's actually associated, a really skinny body is associated with health is completely debatable. But when you look at the context of what's happening at that time with, massively increasing obesity levels, maybe you'll see that there might have been a reason why the fashion industry was promoting this look as aspirational. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. But it kind of does feed into the question of how do I maintain my confidence when being compared to other women. I just remember things like that. I remember that beauty is completely socially constructed, because on one hand, like, you attach your value and, your value not just as a model, but even as a person, because it does kind of take over your whole, modeling's not the kind of job that you can just stop when you go home. Like, you always have to be thinking about what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, how you're taking care of your skin, whether you're getting enough sleep and things like that. So your worth as a person, and this is kind of a lot more true for younger girls, not always, but a lot of the time, who kind of get into it and it starts to take over their head, that your worth as a person is quite connected to how much you are booking as a model. And if you're working really, really well, it must be because you're really beautiful, you look really good and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't, if you're not working, it's because you're shit and you don't look any good. And that's not always true. And I've observed this from experience over the years, that sometimes, not just with me, but with my friends as well, you can look amazing, but if you don't have that energy, that confidence that you're bringing to castings when you go and meet clients, you're not going to book the job, because there's so many other girls that they can hire who have a bit more personality and who are a bit more fun to work with. Because ultimately, like, when everybody kind of looks the same, because ultimately, like, most models would kind of do, like, there's a little bit of diversity, in terms of, like, some will be slightly skinnier and some will be slightly curvier, some will be, black, some will be white, but generally, like, everybody looks pretty good and everybody can do the job. They want somebody who's gonna be fun to work with. That's kind of more important than, like, this girl looks slightly better than that girl. So, you just have to remember that sometimes. And then also, I would just see, I'd sometimes compare myself to other girls and just go, oh my God, I need to look like her because she's booking all the work. If only I was like 3 inches taller and a dress size smaller and had longer hair. I mean, when I first started, I had short hair. And that was one of the things that I felt like I needed to change. I would compare myself to other girls and go, oh my God, I need to look like this tall, skinny white girl because she's booking all the work. And then I would meet another girl who was absolutely fucking smashing it, and she would be, shorter than me and curvier than me with like big boobs and mixed race and, looks completely different to the other girl. And you're just like, hang on a second, like, you know, these two girls are completely different, but both of them are smashing it. So it's not like that there's just one way that you need to look in order to not just be a good model, but also be considered beautiful. And one thing that really kind of like reinforced this idea that I'm trying to get across in like a very sort of strong way was when I was modeling in Bangkok a few years ago. And there was this one girl who was with my agency, and I thought she was the most stunning girl ever. She was definitely the best looking girl that I'd seen in Bangkok at that time. And I remember I went up to her when we were all at this nightclub together, and I said to her, like, I think you are the most stunning girl in town. And she replied, she's Italian, so I'm going to do the accent. And she replied, oh, really? Well, and she'll recognize herself if she's watching this. We actually ended up becoming quite good friends after this. She replied, oh, really? Well, how come I'm not working then? And I was like, really? You're not working? She's like, no, I haven't booked a single job. And, you know, I could not believe it, because this girl is fucking stunning. And like, even the guys that I would speak to would be like, oh my God, you friends with her? She's like so stunning. You know, just really like, looks like Linda Evangelista, like, these amazing feline eyes, really good bone structure, short hair, you know, very sort of like strong, just like she had that sort of like 80s, 90s supermodel vibe, like very strong, not just in features, but also personality, like a really, really good masculine, a really good balance of like masculine and feminine energy. And I thought she was just like, if I was a client, I would have booked her straight away, because she just was very strong, very sexy, very, very masculine and feminine at the same time, you know. And Eleanor, if you're watching this, think you're beautiful, love you, miss you loads, like let's Skype or something soon. But yeah, she was not working, and I couldn't believe it, because this is the kind of girl. I mean, she works really well in Milan and Paris, which are two markets which I think I've worked in Paris, but not in Milan. But I was working really well in Bangkok at that time. So, you know, you would think that I was a better model than her, but I reckon if we both went to Milan, she would fucking smash me out of the water. Like, I would not be working as much as her. I think. But I've never tried Milan, so I don't know that for sure. But it just made me realize that, like, it really just depends on the market, like whether you're going to get work or not. So you have to just realize that. And even if, you know, you could go to every market all around the world and you still might not get that much work as a model. But that's not because you're not as beautiful. It's just because, you know, it could be for any reason, like maybe you're just not the right sample size, you know, because I understand that modeling is there's a very, very narrow set of requirements. And it doesn't mean that the people who don't fit in to those requirements aren't beautiful, because, I mean, some models that I met look really totally weird. And ultimately, also what I started to realize is that beauty is not just about, you know, how well proportioned your features are or how well proportioned your body is, but also just the energy that you bring. Because there were some models that I would meet and I didn't really think that they were that good looking, but then I'd look at their pictures and there was so much emotion that they could channel through their eyes. Like, they could really, some models would be like really beautiful to look at, and then you'd look at their pictures and they were completely flat. They were not conveying anything. And then other models, they just had so much attitude, like you could see it in the pictures, like especially some of the guys, like, because with the male models, you can really tell the ones that can do it and the ones that are just, you know, a mannequin, by how well they can express what mood the photographer is trying to convey. And that's also a kind of a beauty. Like, if you can really like express a certain emotion, not just in a photograph, but even just in life, like you have like a good energy, like a positive energy, or you have a very sexy energy, like those things comprise beauty as well. And, you know, I just started to realize that actually everybody has that, you know, like I would just be walking down the street and like the old lady who's like sitting on the street, who's like selling vegetables, but who always has a smile for everybody. Like, you know, somebody who's like, you know, living in such poverty and, you know, obviously doesn't go and get her hair done and get a facial and buy the latest clothes, but just has such a beautiful, positive energy. Like, you know, that's beautiful as well. So you've just got to realize, like, why you are here and what are your unique gifts that you have to share with the world. Because when you're being compared to other people, there's always going to be somebody that is better than you, who is better than you in some way. There's always going to be somebody who is taller, who is skinnier, who is prettier, who has a better bum or better boobs. And, you know, at the end of the day, that person is probably going to look at you and go, oh my God, like, I wish I had your eyes, or, you know, you've got the most amazing hands, or I wish I was as articulate as you, or I wish I, you know, had traveled as much as you, or, you know, I wish that my mum had cuddled me more, or, you know, all these different things that, you know, you can be envious about you can envy other people for so many things, but ultimately, like, you know, firstly, look at it as a choice. Like, when you see something that somebody has that you don't have, they're giving you a choice. Like, you can have this, whatever it might be. If it's something that you can't have because, you know, it's something like to do with the way that they look or their ethnicity or something that you can't change about yourself, then just accept that, you know, that's their journey. Like, you don't know what their journey is about, just as much as you don't really know what your journey is about. Just keep doing what you're doing and keep being the best that you can be, taking care of yourself, looking after yourself, acquiring health, and, you know, taking care of your body so that it shines from the inside out. And then, you know, you don't need to worry about what other people are doing. Like, you should only be comparing yourself. The only way you should be comparing yourself to other people is, you know, if you're using other people as a tool to motivate yourself and inspire yourself and say, I want what that person has got and I'm going to get it. I'm going to look at what that person has done to get where they are, and I'm going to be inspired to repeat that in my life. So ultimately, that's kind of what it comes down to. There's no point in beating yourself up at, you know, over, you know, what somebody else has that you don't have. And, you know, I'm as guilty as anybody else for doing this. You know, I watch the Victoria's Secret runway show and I'm just like, oh my God, I want that life. But then I just think, do I really want like loads of people just like following me on Instagram and, you know, without really caring that much about who I am and what I have to say, just because I sell some fucking lingerie? Or like, you know, it's great. Like, it's really inspirational seeing like how hard they work on their bodies, and I can use that to motivate myself to like go to the gym every day so that I can get that for myself. But ultimately, like, I'm actually really happy with what I have. I'm happy with like my friends and my social life and the amount of freedom and the amount of free time that I have, and the ability that I have, just the freedom that I have to just, you know, say what I want without worrying about the fact that I have a contract with, you know, this company that means that I can't say this and all that kind of stuff that comes with fame and success. So yeah, just try and like reframe things a little bit, you know, when you're comparing yourself to other people. Just think like, you know, would you really want what they have? Because, you know, sometimes what they have looks really great from the outside, but, you know, the reality from the inside might not actually be so great. So yeah, I hope that's given you, you know, some answers to your questions. I want to hear from you guys now. What are your top tips, pieces of advice for people who are wondering how to deal with jealousy, envy, in feelings of insecurity when comparing yourself to others? How do you deal with them? Leave a comment below and let's all have a discussion about this. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.